Come on. Welcome back to our library studio. I'm your host, Craig Winn, and well, this is the south side of a Wookiee going north, quite literally. Oh, thank you for turning around there, Wook. We are going to return to a somber story. This is the lowest point that humanity would ever fall. It is the closest to the brink of our demise that we ever came. This is not just the moment where Dowd, who is David, tripped and fell, coveting another man's wife, stealing her, likely raping her, and then killing her husband. It is the moment where he blamed God for his problems as opposed to taking responsibility himself, and more importantly, getting up from his tumble and showing that he could be trusted again. And as I have shared the narrative that Dowd provides in his own words in the 51st Psalm, it's somber. I have been exceedingly critical, tremendously judgmental of the man that I respect more than any other, not for what he did here, but what he would ultimately accomplish on our behalf. And not only do I recognize that Dowd lived some 48 years in the center of the arena, doing the job that heretofore no one has ever accomplished and seen to its completion, that of representing Yahowah to his people. And that after 48 years of doing really admirably in this regard, Dowd fell. And it is likely that even before this episode that he began to deal with bouts of depression, recognizing that he really couldn't get it done, that it was too much, and that he'd been doing it too long and he was worn out. And I'm convinced, as are others, that he was beginning to self-medicate by drinking himself into oblivion to take his mind off of his depression. And it was through the depression and the alcohol speaking that he said what is now recorded in the 51st Psalm. The other thing I want to make clear, beyond the fact that Dowd had 48 great years before this, which is longer than anyone had ever served in that role, and B, that we would get his attention. We would get him back to the point where he not only would acknowledge that he had been terribly and tragically wrong, but he would accept who he is. He would come to know what God expected of him, and he would man up, and he would fulfill the most difficult mission in all of human history, that of fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, Bokurim in his second of three lives in 33 CE. The other point I want to make is that when we hear Dowd lashing out at Yahowah, when we hear him blaming God for his own failings and confusing all of this so badly as he did, what I want you to see, what God wants you to see, is Israel. At this point, Dowd was symbolic of what Israel had become during the Exodus and has remained. He was Israel. This is Israel. And the point that God wants to make is that with Dowd representing how far Israel had fallen, that just as there was promise of a better tomorrow for Dowd, and that he would return to Yahowah and return to his mission and complete it. Such is also the case with Yisrael. Some of you, a mortal remnant of you in the end, will do so. You will come to know Yahowah. You'll return to him, and you will be restored as well. And as it turns out, it's interesting to note that the man who was responsible for restoring Dowd's relationship with Yahowah is also the man who will restore the remnant of Yisrael's relationship with God. And so it makes all of this poetic in a way. As I shared in our last program, when Dowd chose Bara in this next sentence, he was way out of line. Bara is a word in Hebrew that speaks of create from the sense of doing something that has never been done before. It's starting fresh. It's creating something that has never existed. And so this is what Dowd said. You must choose to create, Bara. It's imperative that you decide to fashion and form that which has never existed before. Call imperative, second person, masculine, singular. Something that is clean and pure in judgment, in thoughts and emotions, inclination and disposition, leb, for me. And then he ends it with God. So you must choose to create. It's imperative that you decide to fashion and form that which has never existed, clean and pure, majestic and brilliant, judgment, thoughts and emotions, inclinations and disposition for me, God. Then it is imperative that you decide to repair, restoring and renewing by appointing a firm and a steadfast Ruwach spirit within me. Mizmowr song, Psalm 51:10. No. He's wrong about everything. Yeah, I understand he's the returning king. I understand he's the Son of God. But at this moment, he wasn't acting like either. God's not going to recreate something new just for one man, even if that one man is his beloved son. He set the rules, he established them, he communicated them, he articulated them, he fulfilled them. He is not about to change them, not for anyone. He is not starting over. We either get it right in this timeline or not at all. God is not going to have a new creation because one person or a bunch of people fell down and were having tizzy fits. So no. And to use the imperative mood with Yahowah, which is what is being conveyed here, you only have three options, all three of which are wrong. It either says you must choose, must in the imperative, choose in the conveyance of second person volition, or that we're dealing with some kind of a hypothetical situation which has no chance of success. And so this is what is being conveyed here. Excuse me. My dog has gone back to 9 on her paws. She is battles yeast infections, and she takes it out on her paws, and will get to the point where she can't even stand up on them if I don't distract her attention. So that is what we're doing here. So with everything in life, we must pay attention to what's happening around us, or things will unravel. So you must choose to create. No, he doesn't. And the clean and pure thoughts, this majestic and brilliant judgment that he is seeking here or mocking God regarding, isn't God's responsibility. He gave us a nephesh, a conscience, an asama conscience, and a nephesh consciousness, so that we could observe the world around us and make prudent decisions. He gave us the text of his Torah and his prophets so that we could study them and make sound decisions. Our inclinations and disposition, our thoughts and emotions, our minds and hearts should be properly established and guided based upon the testimony that God has given us. It's not his job to ignore all of that and say, oh, no problem. I'll just snap my fingers. I'll wiggle my nose. I'll make it all good for you because you're special. Not how he works. He is not going to change the rules, not going to start over and give you what you want just because you want it or because you're projecting it on him and saying that he must do it. He's not. He articulated the means for us to have appropriate thoughts and emotions, inclinations and dispositions. And those instructions are found in his Torah. Pay attention to them, learn from them, grow as a result of them, and your judgment, your thoughts, your inclinations, your disposition, your heart and mind, well, will be as it should be. Now, tahir, majestic and brilliant, yeah, well, brilliant perhaps. Clean and pure, nah, let's just say the right term would have been right. That if you get your act together and you pay attention to what God has shared with you, then your judgment will be right. So it is Shadak that he should have written, not Tahar. And he never should have written Bara, and he should not have projected this on God. He should have said, I will redouble my efforts to study, to shamar, to closely examine and carefully consider your Torah instructions. So as a result, my judgment, thoughts, emotions, and inclinations will be Sadak, right. Take responsibility. Then it is imperative that you decide to repair, restoring, and renewing by appointing a firm and stable Ruwach spirit. Good grief, man. You have completely lost it. Wow. It is dismal to see what the combination of depression and alcohol can do to a man who has the cognitive capability to be right, to be articulate, to be moral, but not now. He is telling God that he is busted because God's Ruwach spirit was defective. That's what he's saying. He was given the Ruwach spirit of Yahowah when he was 8 years old, never departed from him, not in this life, not in the next two, always supporting him. The Ruwach spirit doesn't flinch. The Ruwach spirit doesn't go AWOL. The Ruwach spirit does not need to be restored or renewed. She's quite fine on her own. It is not God's job to repair, restore, or renew the Ruwach. Not within Dowd, not within me as the choder, not within anyone to whom he has afforded the benefits of his Ruwach. But let's also be clear. As the choder, that's a prophecy you can study in Yeshayahu, Isaiah 11. I have been given the seven spirits of Yahowah. They are the spirit of Yahowah himself, the Ruwach of Yahowah himself, the Ruwach of Chakma, of wisdom, of intelligent thought, of providing rational insights, of being, of making reasonable, logical conclusions based upon the evidence by making connections between things. Bina. The spirit of Etzah, which is the tree of comprehensive analysis and counsel. The spirit of Gibowrah. The spirit of Gibowrah is that of boldness and of courage and of steadfastness and firmness and ferocity and complete and total confidence, such that you'll remain unwavering. The spirit of Dowd, which is the other half of Etzah, and that is the tree of knowledge. And the Ruwach, the spirit of Yahowah, of respect and reverence for everything Yahweh and his name represent. And having those 7 spirits, I still have free will. If I go out and decide, that was a tough day, I think I'm going to have a 2 margarita lunch such that I'm messed up for the rest of the day and can't think straight and just want to go take a nap, that's on me. Not on the Ruwach. If I shirk my responsibility and take a day off from this job and just lounge around like I don't really care, that's on me, not the Ruwach. The Ruwach is there, ready, able, willing, but only to help the able, ready, and willing. Dowd wasn't. The Ruwach wasn't broken. He was. The Ruwach do not usurp our free will. They do not control us. And now, mind you, when I'm speaking of this, there aren't 100 people throughout time that have had Yahweh's Ruwach within them. And there's only one that have had the 7 Ruwach of Yahweh. So this is a unique situation when he's speaking to the Ruwach, but he knew that Yahweh gave him the Ruwach, was never going to remove the Ruwach, and he's just simply shifting blame. And he's wrong. Now, thinking properly, as I've shared, it's our responsibility. It's not God's. Yahweh conveyed the means to this result, and the rest is up to us. This all gets back, really, to the prime directive. You know what that is? We were conceived to be observant, responsive, and reliable. It's the only way God's going to empower us to the degree that we are able to shed our physical bodies and have our souls encapsulated in light energy and be able to explore the universe with God and rise through the dimensions and time. So the covenant is a relationship in this regard. Once we demonstrate that we are observant, responsive, and reliable, it is not an entitlement. Our judgment, our every thought and emotion, can be properly guided by Yahweh's Torah teaching. But alas, both Yahweh and the Torah were conspicuously missing from Dowd's diatribe. He never mentioned Torah. He never mentioned Yahweh's name. He never mentioned the Bereth covenant. Yeah, this diatribe of Dowd's was missing some really key ingredients. And the very fact that it didn't mention Yahweh's name, it made Dowd ever more like, guess who? Israel, that has erased it, forgotten it. Now, as a result, the king was, confused, whether it be the depression, whether it be the wine, whether it just be he was having a rough time of it. There was nothing wrong with the Ruwach spirit. The Ruwach Yahweh had placed upon Dowd during his anointing at 8 years of age did not need to be repaired. The spirit would remain steadfast. She does her thing. We are grateful when we have her counsel and support. However, the Ruwach, spirit of Yahweh, is not a dictator. There is no usurping of free will. She is a guide, a contributor, a resource, and can be an inspiration. But to enjoy these benefits of her counsel, one has to be attuned to her nature and to her purpose. So, in this assessment, Dowd was casting aspirations on the Ruwach, claiming that she was faulty, indeed, the cause of his impropriety, as if the Ruwach thought that Bathsheba was pretty, and that the Ruwach said, man, to have a little piece of that, I'll go kill somebody. No, not in a billion, trillion, gazillion years. The Ruwach did not need to be repaired. There was no reason to purge her or to replace her. That would have been counterproductive. The Ruwach of Yahowah is magnificent. It's one of the greatest gifts anybody could ever have. I say one of the Ruwach is magnificent. I mean, it's more valuable than all of the gold and jewels on the planet. But Yahowah is a greater gift too, still. His Torah is a marvelous gift. The covenant is a marvelous gift. The Mikra are marvelous gifts. The Torah is all part of that. So it wasn't the spirit who lacked resolve, it was Dowd. So let's face reality. As I said, the king was wrong. He had shirked his responsibility by sending Yisrael out to ravage a foe while he languished in bed. He wanted his servants to brutalize and plunder a city filled with non-combatants. He was sleeping during the day and carousing at night. He was abusing alcohol, and he had become a voyeur. He acted lustfully even when he knew better. He had gathered the facts regarding Bathsheba, and he deliberately, knowingly, and selfishly pursued what he knew to be wrong. He abducted a married woman from her home and immediately had sex with her. He tried to conceal his malfeasance with an elaborate scheme, only to disrespect the decisions of a good man and make a spectacle of ongoing debauchery. Then he plotted to assassinate the man who he had insincerely wined and dined just the previous night, writing a deplorable letter that he made him carry. And if becoming a lousy king, husband, father, and son were not enough, he turned on God and started blaming Yahowah for the Ruwach that he had offered him. Blaming the Ruwach for the mess he himself had made. After besmirching God and the Spirit, the king begged, "You should not throw me away. You should not cast me aside like this. You should not fling me out or hurl me down from your presence. And your Ruach Kodesh, your set-apart spirit, you're never going to take from me. You will not actually grasp hold, obtain, or collect the spirit from me." Well, he was right on both accounts. But to taunt God with this, he was wrong. Yeah, it's true. God was not going to throw Dowd away. Although they were not in one another's presence at this time. And the set-apart spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, he was never going to take from Dowd, although she was doing him no good at this moment. They were also on the outs. But let's be clear. It was not Yahowah who had discarded Dowd, but the son who had rejected his father. As for the Ruwach, God had clearly stated 48 years prior to this day that the spirit would never depart. There was no reason to taunt God over what he had promised. Once again confronted by an awkward use of the imperative mode. We do not know if Dowd was being demanding or projecting what he wanted unto God, but this time there is a difference because the imperative was combined with the cohortative, making this a merging of wills. But alas, while that may have been a step in the right directions under the right circumstances, it wasn't Yahowah who needed saving. Listen to this. It's written in the imperative and the cohortative. Hypothetically, by mandate or by choice, by your will or mine, it's emphatic that you return to me. For all the jubilation of your Yesha deliverance, your rescue, liberation, and salvation. And with a dignified and honorable, willing and acceptable spirit, choose to support and uphold me. Mizmowr Psalm 51:12. There should have been nothing hypothetical about this. There should have been nothing as a command or mandate about this. Dowd should not even have been requesting it as a product of his will. God is quite clear on shub. I say it all the time, as if watching the Seinfeld episode on the soup Nazi. Shub for shub, or no shub for you. Israel, this is the message you need to hear. It's the message articulated through the prophet Hosea and elsewhere through the prophets in Torah. You departed Yahowah. You left him, just as Dowd did on this occasion. He will not return to you until you return to him. The same thing was true with Dowd. God was not going to resolve this problem with his son. He had walked away. He had made a decision long ago that he would resolve problems of this magnitude through an individual of his choosing, who he inserted for this purpose. And in this case, he gave Dowd the double whammy, a husband and wife, a mother and father. And only when they read Dowd the riot act, when they dressed him down, when they gave him a stiff dose of reality, when they provided him with a mirror, and he returned to Yahowah, did Yahowah return to him? Yes, Dowd is also mocking Yahowah here and saying that the reason you have to return, God, no matter how bad he has been, he says, ha, 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 you may be having a tizzy fit and blaming me for being a bad boy, but based upon your own testimony, there is no Yesha, salvation. There is no deliverance. There's no rescue. There's no liberation for Israel, for Dowd, for humankind without this relationship being resolved. Unless Yahowah can return to Dowd, there is no rejoicing. There is no salvation. There is no hope for humanity. He had that part right. But what he had wrong is mandating God's return. The truth is, Dowd had to return. The essence of that is presented in the last word picture, and then again in the 89th Mizmowr. Tough to read, isn't it? Tough to hear. And with a dignified, honorable, willing, and accepting spirit, choose to support and uphold me. He is again blaming the Ruwach. Yeah. There are times when I'm like the others who have tried to do this mission, and I get frustrated and I say, come on, God. I mean, this is just impossible. This job you want me to do, you got to make it a little bit easier. I need some help here. And And, he doesn't have any frustration with that because he knows it's hard. He knows it's darn near impossible. He knows his people are idiots and jerks and malcontents and irascible. And he knows that the goyim who hate them are even worse. He knows that no one who has been designated to speak for him has ever been accepted. And they have all been crushed, particularly by the religious, but also by the political. So God knows it's a exceedingly difficult job, and doesn't even mind when we say this job, God, is impossible. I mean, I'm going to keep on doing it because that's what you expect, and I appreciate your support, and we'll get her done. But oh my, does it really have to be this difficult? And the answer is yes, it does. And the answer is yes, we're going to get it done. And the answer is yes, that the spirit will remain dignified and honorable, willing. And the fact is that the spirit is royal, noble, and accommodating because the spirit comes from Yahowah. And it's the purpose of the spirit to uphold us, to decide to sustain us, to empower us, to influence us. All of that's true. It just isn't true with the attitude from which that Dowd delivered it. That's Psalm 51:12. So this was another twisted half-truth. Once Dowd regained composure and his conscience was restored and redirected, he would shub. He would return to Yahowah, making it possible for God to return to him. With our Father, it is shub for shub, or there is no shub for you. Keep that in mind, Israel. Also, once together, their collaboration would liberate us from our guilt, resulting in a celebration of salvation. And while Yahowah is rejoicing that eventually we're going to get this right and we are ultimately all beneficiaries, it was no laughing matter at the moment. So it's true. Also, that God has more than one Ruwach. Now, he could have substituted the Ruwach inside of Dowd. He didn't, but he could have. And it is possible for a malach spiritual being, not a Ruwach, but certainly for a malach spiritual being to be dishonorable. Look at Hasatan. But that was not the problem here. The Ruwach spirit given to Dowd by Yahowah was and will forever be dignified and noble. Coming from God, she is also royal. However, one should never ask Yahowah to do something that he is overtly committed to providing. By doing so, a person is either revealing that they haven't bothered to read or consider what God has previously stated, or that they don't trust him to honor his commitment. Either way, it's disrespectful. And speaking of disrespectful, Dowd has returned to taunting the Almighty, although I don't think he's ever refrained from that in this whole diatribe, which is what makes him so symbolic of Yisrael at this moment. He is not only saying that he will be inclined to act if God gives him what he wants, but that the result will reflect the very mess that he has already made. Oh, that's quite a thought, isn't it? Dowd is telling God, I will do what you want if you give me what I want. But understand that if I give you what you want, it's going to be no different than this mess. And that is to suggest, as bad as Dowd had become, that the rest of Yisrael would be no better forever. He said, I will be inclined to learn and teach, lamad. I will choose to respond, even submit, so as to accept training and then instruct. Call imperfect, cohortative, first person, singular. It means inclined, choose, accept is all a product of the cohortative. It is an expression of first person volition. It has to be included in the statement. Therefore, I will be inclined to learn and teach. the pisha, the rebellious and revolting, the offensive and the defiant, the indignant and criminal, the disloyal and insubordinate, your ways, your approach. Then chataim, the wicked and the immoral, the misleading and misled, the culpable and blameworthy, even the fallacious, chata'ane, the erroneous and faulty, they will return to you. Oh, yikes. I don't think you can call it a strikeout anymore unless we're trying to strike out the side over 9 innings. Baseball hadn't even been invented. And here he was fanning away. Well, hitting foul balls right back in God's face. A series of half-truths and outright lies does not a truth make. Sure, those who were overtly religious or political had been insubordinate and even indignant towards Yahowah. It's the nature of Israel. It's the history of Israel. And the Goyim are worse. Religion in particular is revolting. It's offensive. However, the prerequisite of the covenant requires us to reject this defiance against God prior to proceeding toward a relationship with him. Therefore, the currently pasha are not to be afforded or even shown Yahweh's ways. God does not want anything to do with them. If you follow me on the Craig Winn Facebook page, where I interact every day, usually 4 or 5 times a day, and there will be Twistians and political MAGAs, both, sometimes Muslims, even occasionally a Marxist who will take umbrage with me and try to promote their agenda. And while I will typically respond once, I will not provide a comprehensive defense because Yahweh wouldn't want me to. The fact is that I can tell them if they want to know the truth, which they don't, they can find it at Yahowah. Go to yahowah.com. There's 35 books on that website, hundreds and hundreds of blogs like this one, many other insights and tools. By the way, we now have the translation presented in a glorious way. It's much more interactive and capable, presenting every iteration of every verse that I've ever translated by book and number, chronological order, with the ability to click the words themselves and going to definitions of the words, or click the reference and go directly to the flip book in which it is presented in context. It is a marvelous tool. I know it was finished a couple of days ago, and I don't know if it's been made live on the Yahowah site, but it will be there very soon because it is now completed. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Leah, for working with him to get a search engine for our translations of this quality. It's a wonderful thing, wonderful addition. But go to yahowah.com, and I will tell them, go there. If you want to learn, there you go. But the thing is, I will never debate with them. If they make statements, I'll typically leave whatever they wrote, no matter how offensive it is, no matter how wrong it is, and I will correct it. And I'm not correcting it for them. God wants something to do with them. I'm correcting it for those in our company so they know the correct answer, and so that when they're confronted, they can give a similar answer. But I will never chase after them. I will never try to convince them. It's one of the things that religious do all the time. They want to convince you that you're wrong and they're right, and that you need to come over to their side because, well, it reinforces their faith, their belief. God has no interest in that. He has his testimony. It does not change. You present what he has said, you stick with it, you reinforce it, you don't waver from it, and you never invite somebody who is pesha or chataim, misleading or fallacious, who is wrong about God, you do not invite them into God's company. In fact, they are not welcome in God's company. And as a matter of fact, what he's saying isn't even possible. They cannot enter God's company. And that's similarly true with chataim, misleading and fallacious. They are despised by God. They are expressly excluded from his presence. So while the misled can be restored to fellowship, those who are still culpable cannot. Neither category of men, pesha or chataim, are able to shub, return to Yahowah, until they stop being pesha and chataim. Capish? But that wasn't the point Dowd is attempting to convey. He is continuing to blame Yahowah. He's saying that even if he returns to duty, even if he considers being part of this mission again, it will result in more of the same. Unable to see past his nose to Uriah, the light of Yah, who was a very good man, or foresee others arising over time who would be right. The king is continuing to be defeatist. He's saying, I'm bad, they're bad, and your approach isn't going to make me or them any better. It's pretty defeatist, isn't it? This time, with the imperative mood devoid of the cohortative, we find either the possibility of being plucked clean or the demand to be stripped now of killing and blood guilt as we move on. But that wouldn't be possible prior to the fulfillment of Passover and unyeasted bread, both of which were a major restoration and of his attitude and a full millennia away. By possibility, command, or choice. Decide and determine to spare me, snatching me away. That's Elani. It is imperative that the slight chance exists and is chosen for you to strip me, saving me by plucking me away. Hiphil, imperative, second person, masculine, singular, from blood, from death, from killing and blood guilt, mindam, from bloodletting. God of my deliverance and victory. Then my tongue will shout, crying out your righteousness and justice. Mizmowr song, Psalm 51:14. Not getting any better, is it? Yahowah was already on record stating that the consequence of Dowd's extinguishing the light of Uriah would be a long litany of death and destruction for Israel. Neither Dowd nor Israel would be putting down the sword anytime soon. There would be lots of bloodletting, much of it Israeli. In fact, it would continue for 3,000 years, and it will finally end with the bleeding of the par bull, whose blood Dowd would use to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, finally resolving all of this for him and for Yisrael between Teruah and Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, 2033. Therefore, following the bloodletting of Pesach and Teruah, 2 to 3 millennia distant from this diatribe, the king would return to shout out the full magnitude of Yahowah's righteousness. It is ultimately God who is tzedakah, correct and vindicating. So in this, the king was right, even if his attitude was wrong. However, once again, what follows is another partial truth, the worst kind. When you commingle truth and lies, all you do is confound. Yahowah is not our Lord, and we do not need him to open our lips so that we can report the truth. His message ought to enter our eyes and ears, formulate in our brains, and then naturally flow out of us in complete appreciation for him. But even then, Yahweh should be respected for what he has done and is offering. He is not soliciting our praise. He is not insecure. At this moment, unable, unwilling to even say Yahweh's name, Dowd begins, Adonai, my Lord. You open my lips, and my mouth will report your praise. Having not experienced the intervention of Yahweh's Amma, productive mother, or her Baal husband, Yada, the son was grasping at straws. He wanted an easy way out, and yet realizing that he would serve as the sacrifice that Yahweh wanted was, what he would try to assert next. He said, unfortunately, you do not want or desire, and you are not moved by sacrifice or slaying. Or I would elect to provide, choosing to give an uplifting or burnt offering, but you will not accept or agree. Psalm 51:16. What God had said is that he did not want or desire and was not moved by the sacrifices and the offerings of men. He takes no pleasure in slaughter. And he said here that I would provide, I would choose to give you something, a token. We'll go off and pluck the wings off a dove, or roast a lamb, or skewer a bull. And, I would do that. No skin off my nose to do that. He said, but you wouldn't agree to accept it. It's true. Not under these circumstances. You will not be swayed. You will not be fond of. You will not allow the regaining of flavor under these circumstances. Alas. Ultimately, he would offer the sacrifice. He did. He would. God would accept it. And the fact is that once he got his head back in the game and returned to Yah, realized who he is and what he was supposed to do, then there would be two remarkable sacrifices, both of which God would find acceptable because he would coordinate both of them. And they were scheduled to occur on Passover in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE, and then on the day of the Herald and the Yobel of 6000 Yah, 2033. As a result of this, I should say a revolt of this magnitude, however, it wasn't going to be resolved by a flock of birds or a goat. This was going to take something special. Unaware of this prior to his dressing down by Leah, my wife, as she visited him as the Amma, and Dowd returning to his senses, sobering up after his very rough, unceremonious encounter with Yada. Dowd remained especially irritable and irascible for a while longer. Things unraveled all around him, which is how we know this to be the case. It is as if he were trying to outdo the Israelites during the Exodus in irascibility. And this next line, it's particularly brutal. The sacrifices of God are a broken and destroyed, a shattered and crushed spirit, judgment thinking and motivations that are shattered and crushed, even pulverized to the point of becoming despondent. God, you should not be so despised and contemptible, despicable and lowly. I'm not making this up. You can read it as Psalm 51:17. Personally, I didn't think it could come to this. Frankly, I don't know this man, although it's apparent I would meet with him. But I think in our meeting, I told him to shut up and listen. Told him not to open his mouth until I was done. He had made a big enough fool of himself. The sacrifices of God are not broken. They're not destructive. They're not shattering or crushing. They're all presented as Olah. It's from Allah. It means uplifting. They are exactly the opposite. Yahweh never crushes the Ruwach. Ruwach is dispatched from him. If Dowd were being rational, he would have complained about having a crushed nefesh soul. That would have been his. The Ruwach was not his. It was loaned to him. And none of this was the Ruwach's fault. And the sacrifices of God are uplifting. Now, I will tell you that if you're going to be one of the three people that is offering a sacrifice, the ram, the bull, and the goat, Dowd, Yada, and Elia, you're going to have your body broken and destroyed, shattered and crushed. That's the way the sacrifice goes. But it's your body. You don't care. Your soul's fine. That's why distinguishing nefesh here would have been important. And the Ruwach protects the nefesh soul during the process so that the sacrifice of the body is done in such a way that the soul is not bruised or mauled or smashed in the process. Dowd would have a lot to learn. And God has no interest in shattering or crushing, breaking the judgment, thinking, and motivations of anyone. He is trying to hone them. He is trying to develop them. He's trying to encourage this. And he says so throughout his testimony. And the one who was despondent was Dowd, Daka. Daka is a term also that's used in connection with the Adama Para. His body will be Daka, pained and collapsed, wounded and crumpled, pulverized to the point of being virtually destroyed. And then to conclude it with, God, you should not be so despised and contemptible, despicable, and low, basha, you should not be so vile and worthless. You know, I think you'll notice that the last 3 times we've done this program, I've worn black. I feel like I'm attending a funeral. I feel like I am burying my king, my brother, my friend, the man I've respected more than any other. But you see, I knew the man who lived the first 48 years so valiantly. And I knew the man who would emerge from this after the counsel of his surrogate mother and father, after the intercession of the final mashal and the glorious 89th Psalm. And we will return to that man shortly. We will celebrate that man because he exists. But right now, you wouldn't know it. So whether it was the alcohol, depression, or just an embittered soul looking for love in all the wrong places while showing an abject disregard for God and for life, I mean, he's quasi-suicidal at this point. Even a modicum of responsibility. Had he had it, he wouldn't have done this. This is reprehensible. It's inexcusable. I'm disappointed to have translated it, and I'm even more upset to have to share it with you. Dowd at the moment was a broken man. He is political Israel. He is religious Israel. 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, right now, today, over the next 7 years, indeed. Broken. It's just that Dowd, like Israel, fell more precipitously and publicly, and the fate of the world was resting on him getting back on his feet again, as will the fulfillment of Teruah, Parym, and Sukkah, just over 7 years from now. Now, should you have questioned whether a subsequent scribe had the audacity to portray the king in this unflattering light, well, there would be no motivation for doing so. There's also no evidence of tampering revealed in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have two copies of this psalm, 4Q85PS and 4Q91PS. And while they only cover the first 4 of 19 statements, there are a surprising number of spelling anomalies in them. But that's likely because Dowd was not about spell check at the moment. He was too inebriated. But nothing of that alters the meaning of the words themselves. Yahowah is in the business of inspiring our souls, of emancipating and empowering us, enabling us, enhancing our existence. These are the express benefits of the covenant. It is only those who mislead his people and who are overtly opposed to him whose souls are crushed in the abyss of Sheol. This isn't a sacrifice of God or to him, but of the wanton disregard for God's intent and the destruction of our own souls by making poor choices. Very few humans, and perhaps fewer than 1 in a billion, are afforded the Ruwach of Yahowah. I made this point previously. And the intended result among the few is for our judgment to soar, for our thinking to be elevated, for our motivations to align with Yahowah's. It is God's desire to build us up, to elevate us, so that we can become ever more like him. And while there are 2 bodies, as I have shared, that are slated for Shabar and for Daka, it is their disposable Bashar bodies, not a Ruwach or a Nefesh, that is being crushed. Yahowah elevates his covenant family and only depresses those who are overtly opposed to them and him. So now trying to intervene his will with God's. This next pronouncement isn't appropriate either way. I wouldn't dare ask God to do better or to be better. But Dowd did. No matter how improbable, if commanded and mandated or by choice, your will and my unequivocal desire is for you to be good, to be better, even agreeable and pleasing. Yathab, if possible, demanded, or by your volition or mine, you will improve. You're going to be happier in your acceptance and approval. With Zion, the signs posted along the way, you continually build up walls and barriers. Jerusalem, the source of guidance on reconciliation. Yahweh is not the one who built Jerusalem's walls. He is not trying to keep his people away. In fact, he's calling them home. Moreover, he wants everyone to read his Zion, his signs that are posted along the way. They bring his people home. If not for everything preceding it. Now, this concluding statement would be considered prophetic. The only minor adjustments would be the plural form of parym, when the singular designation would be more accurate. Also, by comparison to where we have been, however, this is manna from Shamayim. It's the one flicker of light in this very long and dark tunnel. At that time, you will want proper and vindicating sacrifices, a burnt and elevated offering, which is entirely finished and wholly completed. Kael. Then at that time in the future, parym, bulls, will choose to be sacrificed and offered up, ascending and rising, will be lifted up and carried away on your altar. Mizmowr, Psalm 51:19, that is the concluding statement. Well, there was no altar or burnt offering on Pesach, not when Dowd fulfilled it in 33 CE, even with it being an exceptionally vital sacrifice. But both of these things will be present on Teruah, when Elia orchestrates the sacrifice of the par bull. And at that moment, all will be right and vindicating relative to Dowd and Yisrael. If you don't mind, as it relates to this particular black stain on my king's resume, I'm going to forego the summation of the Mizmowrs, as has been my custom. And we're going to move on to better times. Enough is enough. This, fortunately, was resolved, and Dowd Khalil finished the mission, just as Yahowah will, and he will be true to his calling. We've left the darkness. We will return to the light. Something extraordinary is going to happen. And as we begin our family hour tomorrow on this material, we're going to delve into the glorious result of the intervention. We've already shared the 31st proverb, the last mashal. And we've now delved into the darkness that swallowed Dowd, necessitating it. And now we will, as we begin our program tomorrow, we will share the resolution. And then I'm going to do something that, well, is going to blow your mind. I'm going to tell you how Dowd's relationship with Yahowah was actually resolved. And it's stunning. And it will feel familiar and it will feel new all at the same. So that's where we're headed. I look forward to being with you. We'll try to get in an early show. Hopefully we'll be able to open the the Ocean Studio tomorrow and finish the 9th Mizmowr of Dowd there, and do a brief program as a warm-up to Family Hour tonight or tomorrow night, beginning at 6 o'clock Atlantic time, 5 Eastern Standard Time, and of course in the middle of the day for you in the Pacific time zone. So we look forward to being with you this time tomorrow. Good night.